If you were to ask any Tekken fan which game in the franchise is the most iconic, the most memorable and the most fun to play, chances are they're going to say Tekken 3. But why? Why after 25 years, after countless other new and more modern games in the franchise, do people still call this one the GOAT? So that is what I'm going to try and find out today, so join me as I look back at Tekken 3, the game that changed everything. Tekken 2 ended up being another massive success for Namco. Both critics and fans loved it, and of course it sold just as well as the previous game, making it one of PlayStation's flagship franchises, so of course a sequel wouldn't be too far away. And in 1996 Tekken 3 had a small release in Japanese arcades before making its way to arcades across the world in 1997, and then of course coming to the PlayStation in 1998. Tekken 3 would be the first game to be released on Namco's new arcade system called System 12, and also be the first game produced and designed by legend of the franchise, Katsuhiro Harada. I wonder how he's getting on now.
And today we are talking Tekken 8, and who better to do that with than executive producer Katsuhiro Harada.
Oh, yep, he's still there. I'm guessing Tekken 3 was pretty decent then. Just like the two previous games, Tekken 3 opens up with an awesome FMV intro, and this is not only the best looking intro so far, but also the best sounding. The music is honestly one of the most memorable pieces of music in the franchise. The visuals also show another massive upgrade from the previous titles. They actually look human. All of the previous game modes from Tekken 2 return in Tekken 3, with 2 new modes being added. All of the old modes play out just like they do in Tekken 2, so nothing new to add there. But the new modes, well, they add a lot more to the game. Tekken Force is a side-scrolling beat-em-up, similar to games like Streets of Rage and Double Dragon, where you get to pick any character from the roster to go through 4 stages, taking on the Tekken Force. That's these dusty guys with about as much health as a slice of bread. At the end of each stage you take on one of the other characters from the roster, until you beat all 4 stages. Sounds simple enough, and it is, but you only get 1 life, so if you lose on the 4th stage by losing all your health, or the timer runs out, you get the game over screen, and are sent all the way back to the start of the first stage. This isn't that big of a deal, as most of the characters you take on in Tekken Force are easy to fly through, but sometimes you can get trapped in a corner and get absolutely demolished, or if you take too much time with your attacks, the timer can run out pretty quickly and you'll end up losing because of that. It's a fun mode, don't get me wrong, but there are some frustrating things. For instance, if you knock an opponent off the screen, you can't move close to them, and you kind of have to wait for them to come back on the screen to finish them off, wasting time in the process. Who the fuck are you? Don't worry about who I am, just worry about that timer. What timer? There's no timer. That one.
Round 1.
Who the fuck? Do you know what? Never mind. Can you go away, please? I'm trying to do something. No can do, muchacho. Not until you beat me in Mortal Kombat! Right, first of all, wrong series, and second of all, I'm not doing that. Haha! Pussy. Right, forget it, let's get it over with. Whoa, hey, what the fuck do you think you're doing? You know what, I don't even know. I'm about to find myself dressed as a hot dog. I think I've gone mental. You can't hit me until I'm in view of your camera. Right, what fucking camera? There's no camera. Can we just get this over with? Hold on, let me do my stretches. Ooh.
Time up. Game over.
Oh, that's a shame. Better luck next time. There's definitely not going to be a next time. Okay then, I'll let you get back to whatever you were doing. Strange guy. Right, that was really fucking strange anyway. Where was I?
Round 2.
Also, having enemies on 2 different sides of the stage and your character locking onto the wrong enemy can completely mess you up. Plus, the game's controls don't really seem built for this type of game. All in all, Tekken Force is still a very fun, unique game mode, different from anything else the game has to offer. Oh, and you also get to hear this a lot. Tekken Ball is the other new mode, and again, it's pretty unique. It's set up similar to a normal match, with the only difference being, well, the massive fucking beach ball. Tekken Ball in 2-player can be a lot of fun, but in single player it can get really old really quick. There's no progression like Tekken Force, and you can easily tell this mode was made with multiplayer in mind. Plus the AI doesn't even know what to do with the ball half the time. I have nothing else to add about this game mode, essentially just twatting each other with a beach ball, and that's okay. And there's one more mode, it's not really a game mode but instead a theatre mode where you can watch all the characters' endings once unlocked, or listen to the soundtrack and even watch endings from the previous 2 games if you have the disc and save on your PS1. This will become the standard in future Tekken games, not having to go through arcade mode every time you want to see Heihachi's massive forehead.
Look at that, he's got a perfectly round head.
So where does the story pick up from Tekken 2? Well, Tekken 3 is set almost 20 years after the events of the last game, with the canon ending being Heihachi's, where he one-ups his son by throwing him into an active volcano. Is it me or is this family feud starting to sound like the spiciest episode of Jeremy Cole ever?
The world will be open.
Anyway, with Kazuya presumably dead, Heihachi has taken back the Mishima Zaibatsu and now has his own personal army called the Tekken Force to protect him. Things have actually been pretty peaceful in the world of Tekken since the last tournament, that is until a mysterious entity known as Ogre shows up and hunts down and kills, yes kills, the world's best warriors. This includes the original king. He also puts Baek into a coma and kills Jun Kazama, whose son swears revenge on the monster. Who is Jun's son? Well, it's none other than Jin Kazama. But not only is he Jun's son, he's also Kazuya's son as well. Can't you tell by them having the same passion for shit haircuts? Yeah, the animal activist who was investigating Kazuya in the last game has now given birth and raised his child.
I owe you an apology, I wasn't really familiar with your game.
Before Jun died, she told Jin to find his grandfather, Heihachi, if anything were to ever happen to her. Jin seeks Heihachi and once he finds him, starts to train under him, learning the Mishima style of fighting and getting ready to avenge his mom. Heihachi also sets up the King of Iron Fist Tournament 3 to see who can truly be the one strong enough to take on Ogre. There's actually a pretty good animated series on Netflix called Tekken Bloodline, which actually does a decent job of telling the story of Tekken 3. But whatever you do, never watch this steaming pile of shit. I don't even know where to begin with the gameplay of Tekken 3, so here's a meme which I'm pretty sure is outdated by now.
It was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
Honestly, the way that modern Tekken games feel have a lot to owe to Tekken 3. Compared to the 2 previous games, Tekken 3 is so smooth, it's like comparing a brand new Ferrari on a test track to a 20-year-old Vauxhall Corsa on a council estate. In all honesty, it has been a bit of a chore playing the last 2 games. Everything just seems so slow and tank-like, but Tekken 3 holds up so well. Combos are a breeze to pull off, blocking attacks is a lot easier to pull off, and even getting up off the ground is instant compared to the last 2 games, where it felt like the fighters were taking a nap. This means rounds are more fast paced and exciting. Just look how long it takes me to get through the arcade mode compared to the last 2. It makes for a much more fun and fast paced experience. Also, all characters can now sidestep to dodge attacks, giving you a bit more defence. When you beat the more difficult AI, it actually feels rewarding, like you outsmarted the game rather than you just got lucky. Tekken 3's gameplay is the perfect foundation that the future games in the series will build on, and it's not hard to see why. Tekken 3's roster causes the most shake-up in the series up until this point, with the developers taking a massive risk by getting rid of series favourites like Kazuya, Jun and Bruce, almost having a completely new roster. Wanna know something crazy? Technically Tekken 3 only has 6 characters returning from Tekken 2. These are Paul, Nina, Anna, Heihachi, Yoshimitsu and Lei Wulong, the rest of them being new. Technically is the key word there, because even though characters like Law, King and Kuma return, they're all different people, or in Kuma's case, different karate loving wild animals. Law is actually the second name of the character, with the one in the first 2 games being the father, Marshall, and now his son, Forrest, takes his place in the tournament. King is actually one of the children from those creepy endings at the orphanage for the original King's endings in the first 2 games. And as for Kuma, well, it's been 20 years, so the original one just died, so Heihachi raised a new cub to take his place. Oh, did I not mention Heihachi keeps Kuma as a pet and teaches him the Mishima fighting style? Oh yeah, because of course he does. So Law's not even the real Law, King's not even the real King. Am I even the real me? Hey look, I've wet the bottom of my sausage to make it look like I've pissed myself. Go away. But Tekken 3 does add a whopping 14 new characters to the roster. All in all, that's a total of 23 characters, 2 less than the previous game, but I think it's safe to say Tekken 3's roster saw the introduction of some of the series' most memorable characters. The main one being Jin Kazama. This would also be the first time seeing series legends like Hwoarang, Chao Yu and of course, Eddie Gordo. Tekken wouldn't be complete without its strange characters though, which in this case is Mokujin, a 2,000-year-old training dummy that comes to life because of Ogre's awakening and uses different fighting styles after each stage. There are a lot more strange characters in the game, but I'll talk about them separately. I haven't even spoken about Brian or Julia, or even the original Kung Fu Panda. There's so many new characters that it's hard to give them enough time to talk about them all. I've just realised there's an ogre in this game, and there's a panda that knows Kung Fu. You've got some very big questions to answer, DreamWorks. All in all, Tekken 3 took a big risk by leaving out some of Tekken's most memorable characters, but also giving us some of its most iconic ones. Sadly, we don't get any strange weird modes like Wireframe or Big Head mode, but in their place are of course Tekken Ball and Tekken Force, both with their own unique secrets. First up, and probably the most famous one, is from Tekken Ball. When you first unlock the mode, your first match will be against Gon, a tiny little dinosaur who's actually a pretty famous character from a Japanese manga series. Gon is honestly one of the greatest characters to ever grace Tekken. He's about a foot tall but packs a punch. Well, he's definitely packing something. I hope one day we can see him back in the Iron Fist tournament, but then again, I just imagine what it would be like to play against him online. I hope I never see that fucker again. And the second, more frustrating secret character to unlock is Dr. Bosconovich, who's only unlocked after you have beaten Tekken Force 4 times. Did you just say fuck off? Which can be a bit frustrating, but really doesn't take too long to achieve, especially if you use a totally not at all cheap strategy.
Then I'm gonna start kicking air like this. And if any part of you should feel that air, it's your own fault.
Dr. B is just as strange as Gon in his own ways. He seems to get most of his power from the remote in his hand, which seems to just twat him all across the stage at times. I really don't know how to explain his moveset other than batshit insane. Dr. V plays an actual part in the story of Tekken, unlike Gon, mainly in the stories of Yoshimitsu and newcomer Brian Fury's storyline. And last but certainly not least is Tiger Jackson, who is only unlocked after beating the arcade mode 17 times with different characters. To be honest, he is just a palette swap for Eddie Gordo, but the fact that the developers added these little secret characters just goes to show how much thought and effort went into creating this game, with all of them also getting endings. Speaking of endings, Eddie's ending also had a bit of a spoiler for the future of the series. Kazzy Boy's back, baby! The most notable thing about Tekken 3's stages is that they've moved from recognisable landmarks that featured in the last 2 games to more fictional stages, so no more New York City, Taj Mahal and the outside of Prism nightclub in Birmingham. Instead they're more personalised stages like Jin Kazama in the Mishima Dojo, Eddie on a beach in Brazil, and probably the most iconic being King's wrestling ring in the sky. This will become the usual in the franchise, going for more fictional stages. It probably lets the developers be a bit more creative with the backgrounds and areas, which we'll definitely see in the future games of the series. Sadly, not every character has their own stage like Tekken 2. Instead, different characters will share stages, like Yoshimitsu and Mokujin in the middle of a forest, and Nina, Anna, and for some reason Gunjak all sharing a stage. That sounds like the most disturbing threesome of all time. But even though all characters share stages, the music does change depending on which fighter you face, making the stage more personalised to them. Speaking of the music, I've got a confession to make. I think the first 2 games have a way better soundtrack than Tekken 3. I don't think that's much of a controversial opinion, but someone is going to dislike the video because I said that. The songs in Tekken 1 and 2 are just a bit more iconic, and I don't know if that's just because they have a bit more of a nostalgic factor to me. But to be fair, after going back and playing Tekken 3 and hearing the music again, it isn't bad at all. It has a more grungy rock feel to it, which goes well with some of the stages like Paul and Brian's stage. I honestly think they've knocked it out of the park once again in terms of stages and music. Not as iconic as the previous 2, but still great, and here's some of the best. My favourite stage has to be the iconic Skyring for King. It's such a unique design. The music's alright as well, but isn't my favourite out of the soundtrack. Technically, my favourite song isn't even on the PS1 soundtrack. It's actually one of the arcade ones, which you can switch in the options. The song is simply known as 4 Hidden Characters on the soundtrack, and is used in the arcade version of the game for all the unlockable characters. I don't know why I like it so much. I think it's just a build up at the start, and for some reason it's a song that sticks out most to me when thinking of Tekken 3. I mostly played the PS1 version, rarely played the arcade version, so it says a lot that my favourite song doesn't even appear on the PS1 soundtrack. Even though it's not as iconic as Tekken 1 and 2, Tekken 3 is still home to some of the most iconic music and stages ever seen or heard in the Tekken franchise. In the last 2 videos I haven't really talked about the boss levels, which is a shame because the series has some great ones, especially Tekken 2's Kazuya and Devil combo. Tekken 3 tries to do something equally as epic at the final stage with Ogre and True Ogre, but even though they both look intimidating, especially True Olga. He literally has a snake for an arm. Sadly, they're both pretty easy to beat. Their moves are predictable, they move pretty slow. True Olga rarely blocks attacks, which is a bit of a shame because when you actually unlock them and finally use them for yourself, they feel godly. Even with them being pretty easy to beat, they're still one of the most unique and best designed boss levels in Tekken history. He has a fucking snake for an arm! I also haven't really talked about the characters' endings that much. That's really down to the fact that there's not much to talk about outside of Kazuya and Heihachi's feud. I mean, Bruce's ending in Tekken 2 is just him trying to show off in front of a child.
Ooh, you're hard showing off.
But in Tekken 3, everyone starts to have a bit more story about them. Hell, Julia's ending has the first ever voice acting heard in a Tekken game, even if it is a bit cheesy.
I'll never let Heihachi get away with this.
No, Julia, wait. Julia, hatred is not the answer. Do you remember why I taught you the powers to fight? It was to protect Mother Earth, not to destroy. Now let's go home, back to Arizona, where the land awaits us.
What the fuck was that? But yeah, every character has an ending worth seeing, either for comic relief or just adding a bit more to their stories. I definitely recommend going back and watching these for yourself. They are some of the best in the series. So is Tekken 3 as great as everyone thinks? Yes, absolutely yes, of course it is. What the dev team did with this game in such a little time after Tekken 2 is insane. The new modes, the near perfect gameplay, and of course the new soon-to-be legendary characters that were introduced in Tekken 3. Tekken 3 is always a fun game to go back to and is one you should definitely play for yourselves. I guess you could say you should add it to your playlist. That's a reference to a future series on the channel. Shh. Of course I've got to add Tekken 3 to the tier list, and it would be an absolute disgrace for Tekken 3 to get anything less than S tier. It is the game that every modern Tekken game is built on. It's the foundation for everything that comes after it. The last Tekken game to be released on PS1, what a send-off for the console. Obviously, the next couple games I'll talk about will be on the PS2, which I actually have physical copies for. Look at that. I can actually feel them. I mean, this, yeah. I don't know why I needed to show you that, but I've showed you that. So yeah, I have a bit of an announcement to make. The next video on this channel will not be a Tekken video. They are still coming, but I just kind of want to break it up a bit. I don't want to just have Tekken, because there's 9 games I'm going to be talking about, and that's just going to get boring and burn out a bit. So that's kind of why this video took a bit longer. But yeah, the new series is called The Playlist. It's just a look back on some of my favourite games I've ever played. The first video will be about the Orange Box, Half-Life 2, Portal, that collection. I guess you can consider Tekken 3 like a prequel to this series because it is one of my favourite games of all time. But yeah, the video is going to be less like edited with skits and stuff. It's just going to be me gameplay, talking over it, that sort of stuff. Just easier to edit, and it means that I'm going to be having more than just one video a month coming out. So yeah, it adds more uploads to the schedule, which is always a good thing. And of course, after that I will be talking about Tekken Tag Tournament 2. I am really excited to talk about the PS2 games in this series. The best way to keep up to date with the channel is of course to subscribe and like the video if you enjoyed it. Leave a comment down below, tell me what you thought. I do post on Twitter and Facebook, links will be down below of when I'm thinking of uploading, when I'm working on a video, so if you want to keep up to date with that stuff, they're down below. Just know, if you follow me on Twitter, I am going to be moaning about football quite a lot, so if you enjoy that as well, that's there. But yeah, I've not really got much else to say other than thank you for watching, and as always, I'll see you when I see you.